All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine. I work with SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 53 total affordable rental units at Alexan, Waltham. The purpose of this information session is to give you a little bit of background information on the available apartments, and I'll also cover the lottery application, the eligibility and lottery processes, and then what to expect after the lottery is run. So if you have any questions during this session, you can, if you're on your computer, you can type them into the chat in Zoom, or you can unmute yourself and let me know that you have a question. When you came into this meeting, you should have heard a prompt saying that the meeting was being recorded, and you're also muted so we can just minimize unnecessary noise. The meeting's being recorded because it will be saved to SEB Housing's YouTube channel after tonight, so anyone who wasn't able to join us is able to view it if they would like to after the fact. And you should be able to see some slides on your screen right now. Actually, I am not sharing yet, so you will be able to see them in just a moment. So I have some slides I'm just going to be going through just to kind of help you along some of the information that I'm going to be going over. So at first, just for some background information on who we are. So SEB Housing, we're an off-site affordable housing consulting group. So we're not the on-site management team for the building. We've been hired by the developer to market the affordable units, conduct this information session, collect and review applications to determine an applicant's eligibility in order to eventually run the lottery. So in the initial phases, we at SEB Housing are your main point of contact rather than the management office. But then further along in the process, you'll be in touch with the leasing office over at Alexan, Waltham. And so there's a few steps in this process. The first is to apply for the lottery and be found eligible to qualify for the affordable housing program based off of that application. So when you're first applying for this lottery, you're submitting an application and you're just sort of self-reporting your income. We don't need your pay stubs or anything like that yet to verify your income. We just need you to submit the application either online or a paper application that you email over to us. Second step in the process, if you are a part of the lottery, we will run the lottery and waiting lists will be generated based off of the results of that lottery. And the second step in the process is to be in touch with the leasing office to be qualified for your lease eligibility. So that's separate from the screenings that SEB Housing will be doing, and the leasing office might be checking for things like a credit check, rental history check, background checks, that sort of thing that you might be familiar with if you've rented in the past. And then third, once you've been approved by the management office and you're lease eligible, you'll be directed back to SEB Housing so we can invite you to send in, at that point, verification of your income, assets, and tax information that you listed on your lottery application. So a few steps in the process, you'll have about 10 days to get that information into us, and we'll work with you to make sure you get a completed application in. So a few different screenings. You have the lottery application that you need to get in, your lease screening with the leasing office, and then your program eligibility screening finally to confirm what was listed on your application after the fact. So if you haven't already, you might want to take a look at SEB Housing's website. If you go to the housing opportunities page on our website and select I want to rent, you'll see that Alexan Waltham has a page specific to the property with downloadable versions of the application and also an information packet. The information packet has a lot of the information that I'm going to be reviewing tonight. And just like the first slide, which I'll have up again in just a minute, there's a hyperlink on our website that has both a QR code and a jot form link to complete the lottery application for Alexan Waltham online. So applying online is the quickest way to ensure that your application is received by us right away. Once you've submitted an online application, you'll receive a confirmation email. It'll just come to you instantaneously. But if for any reason a online application isn't an option for you, you can download the PDF version of the application that is on our website, or you can request one if you need us to send it to you. And you'd be able to email or scan it to us, fax it to us, drop it off by drop it off in our Dropbox office in Needham, which is where our physical office is located, or you can send it by regular mail. So there's a bunch of different ways you can get the application to us. Again, we do encourage you to fill it out online if you're able to do that. And just to go back to the first screen here, this is the link that I'm talking about that you'll see on the website, and really on most of the documentation that you'll see for this lottery. That's the link that will take you directly to the online application. We encourage you to get those applications in early. It is fairly brief, shouldn't take you too long to complete. Again, there's no supporting documentation that you need to submit at this stage. You'd just be self-reporting your income. So the best you can, you would be estimating your total household income, writing down all of the assets you have. You might have different bank accounts, that sort of thing. Applications are due by February 17th, so a month from tomorrow. And the online link will shut down at 2 p.m. on February 17th. So just make sure that you get your application in before then. If you're sending in a physical application or if you're emailing it to us, it needs to be delivered or postmarked by 2 p.m. on February 17th to be able to be considered. You don't need to be a resident of Waltham to apply for this lottery. So just want to get that out there. There are a few apartments that will have local preference, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but definitely don't want to dissuade anyone who doesn't already live in the city of Waltham from doing that. So I have a question here. What tax income do we need to submit in the application? So I'm going to get to all of the income, asset tax documentation and all of that, but you don't need to submit anything at all with your lottery application. After the lottery, if you're one of the first households on the waiting list, you would be asked to submit your last year's tax documentation. If you don't yet have your W-2s, for example, from 2024, then you would submit your 2023 tax information. But since this wouldn't be requested of you for quite a while, for probably another 6 weeks minimum, you probably would have those by then, 2024. All right, so I'm going to flip back over here because just want to talk a little bit about the property itself. So it is anticipated that the affordable units at Alexan Waltham, they're going to be available for occupancy immediately following the lottery, and all required applicant screening. So early spring, March, April, and Alexan Waltham. So it's a brand new development located in Waltham, and there's going to be 210 total apartments. 53 of them are going to be affordable at varying income tiers. So we have some units that are going to be made available to households that have a total household income at or below 60% of area median income. And then there's other units that are going to be reserved for households with incomes between 60 and 80% of area median income. And I'll show you that breakdown as well. 14 of the affordable units are the ones that are going to be reserved for households that are that have total household income below 60%, and the remaining 39 are going to be reserved for households with incomes below 80%. Some of the community amenities, so there's a clubhouse, there's a pool, there's a fitness wellness center, there's some bike storage. It's a pet-friendly community. As you can see from the slide here, there's a dog park and a pet washing station. It's located about a half mile from the commuter rail stop in Waltham. And there is in-unit laundry, so you'll have a washer dryer in every home. There is an included parking space And in terms of the pet restrictions, those would, if anybody's interested in those, the leasing office would have more information on that in terms of, normally there's dog breeds that are disqualified, that sort of thing. But as you can see, it's a pet-friendly community. Tenants are going to pay the cost of electricity, which is also how you'd be getting your cooking, heating, hot water, and water and sewer charges are paid by the property owner, so they're included in the rent. There are affordable studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom apartments being offered. And let me show you a little bit about the breakdown there. So going back to the first slide again here, so there's 2 studios that are both going to be offered to households that have up to 80% of AMI. The total rent for those is $2,200. There's 31 bedroom apartments, and 6 of those are at the 60% AMI price point. 24 of them are at the 80% AMI price point. The rents are listed here. The 60% 1-bedroom unit will go for $1,741. And the 80% AMI 1-bedroom apartments will go for $2,347. There's 15 2-bedroom apartments. 4 of those will be capped at 60% AMI, and the rent is $2,080. And then there's 11 80% AMI 2-bedroom apartments. The rent will be $2,808. And then there's also 6 3-bedroom apartments. 4 of those are going to be at the 60% AMI, which is area median income price point. So they're priced at $2,395. And then finally, there are 2 80% AMI 3-bedroom units, and those will rent for $3,235. So I'm going through all that because some of you are not looking at the screen because you're on your phone. So I just want to make sure that you're able to hear those if you haven't looked at the information packet. So the affordable units at Alexan Waltham, they were selected by the owner. They were approved by Mass Housing as being representative of the building as a whole. What that means is they're not smallest units. They're not all clustered in one location in the building. They're not identifiable as affordable units from the outside in any way. The affordable rents are not set in accordance with a applicant's financial circumstances. So these rents are not going to change. These are the rents. They will remain the rents. They might change once per year, usually around the time that HUD, which is the Department of Housing and Urban Development, when they release their new area median incomes for the Boston-Waltham area. They could increase because we can recalculate the rents at that time. That's usually in the spring. But say you were signing a lease for April 1st, 2025 at Alexan Waltham, your rent would not increase until at least April of 2026. So there's always advance written notice of any income change, and usually, and the changes cannot be in the middle of your lease term. I just have a couple questions here. What if you don't have income because you're waiting for SSDI to get approved? So on your application, you would write that you have no income. I'm going to get to the income portion of it in a minute, but if you have no income at all right now, it's going to tell you that you're not qualified for these rentals unless you have a mobile housing voucher. So if you have a Section 8 voucher, or if you have a MRVP voucher, which is similar to Section 8 in the state of Massachusetts, you would still be eligible. But if you don't have an income right now, you won't be eligible if you don't have a voucher. Another question here. Yep, so someone's asking, I'm out of state right now. I'm living in a different state. That's fine. You would just, you would write down your current address and all of that. That's not a problem. Do the 1-bedroom affordable units have a dishwasher and in-unit washing machine and dryer? So every unit has a washing machine and dryer in the apartment. Dishwasher, I am not 100% sure, but I will double check on that. So if you could email us, I'm going to write it in here. So email us at info@scbhousing.com, and I will confirm that for you tonight. I want to say yes, but I don't want to assume. So in terms of the eligibility criteria, you can see it right here in terms of the income eligibility. So there are 4 criteria. I'm going to split back to this in just a second, but there's 4 eligibility criteria in terms of being eligible for the affordable housing program. The first is that households must have qualifying income and assets. So the parameters are on the previous slide. I'll show you those in just a few minutes. But for this lottery, applicants have to have a household income at or below either 80% of AMI or 60% of area median income to be able to be qualified for one of these apartments. The second eligibility criteria is that households can't own a home upon move-in. So if you own a home right now, it would need to be sold and you need to be off of the deed before leasing an affordable unit at Alexan, Waltham. And then actually number 2 on the slide here, the second item to keep in mind for eligibility purposes, household priority is going to be given based off of household composition. So generally that means that larger households are going to have priority for larger units. The reasoning behind that is so, you know, a 1-person household isn't renting a 3-bedroom unit because, you know, on paper that household doesn't need an extra 2 bedrooms. You want to make sure that those households, the larger households, are given priority for larger units. And then also for this lottery, 1-person households can't apply for 2-bedroom units, and 2-person households can't apply for 3-bedroom units unless the household has a disability which requires a reasonable accommodation for an extra bedroom. So maybe if you're a household of 2 people, you would normally share a bedroom because maybe you're a married couple, you're partners. If one of you, because of medical reasons, is not able to sleep in the same room, as long as you have medical information that you could send over to us, you would qualify for it too. And then this doesn't come up often, but applicants can't have financial interest in the development or be a related party. What a related party means is basically if you're related to the builder or if you work in the leasing office at Alexan, Waltham, that sort of thing, you wouldn't be eligible for this lottery. So just to go back to the income limits here. So the top of the screen is, and this is in the information packet, it's on our website, it's on the application, it's sort of everywhere that you might see marketing documentation for this property. So this is a breakdown of the maximum incomes for the 60% units and the 80% units. So if you're a household of 1, you can't make more than $68,520 per year to be eligible for those 60% units. If you're a 1-person household and you make over $91,200, you're not going to qualify for any of these units. If you make in between, if you're a 1-person household and you make in between $68,500 about and $91,200, you're going to be eligible for the 80% unit. The only exception to this is, well, I shouldn't say that. The approximate minimum income and assets are listed down here, and that is by unit size. So there is an exception to the minimum income. These are not set in stone, the minimum income, because the affordable housing program actually doesn't have any minimum income. These are set by the leasing office. So pretty much every leasing office wants to make sure that a household can afford the rent, whether or not they are applying for a affordable unit or a market rate unit. And so these are the same amounts that market rate applicants would need to make in order to qualify for the units as well. So if you're looking to rent a 1-bedroom, 60% AMI unit, you would need to make at least $52,200 a year. Again, these are estimates because maybe it'll be up to the leasing office as to whether or not they qualify you based on your minimum income. So maybe you have a decent amount of cash in the bank, or funds that you're able to access to pay the rent, and they would be able to approve you based on that. So these numbers, the minimum income numbers, are not set in stone, while these maximum income numbers are set in stone because they're a program guideline. The only exception, though, to the minimum income amount is if you have a voucher, if you have a mobile housing voucher. So say you have a Section 8 voucher, you don't need to make $66,000 a year to qualify for a studio 80% AMI. Because your voucher agency, so say it's Boston Housing Authority or Waltham Housing Authority, is going to be paying a portion of your rent at all times, because that is the way that the voucher works. So you can disregard the minimum income amounts if you have a housing voucher. All right, so even though when you submit your lottery application, you don't need to submit your pay stubs or any verifying information at this point, I do still want to give you kind of a broad overview of how your income is going to be calculated for this affordable housing program. So for this program, your income is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. So that includes bonuses, overtime. The only exceptions are really if you have a child, so a minor in the household, maybe you have a 16-year-old in the household who has a job, we're not going to count their wage income. And then also for full-time dependent students, so say you have a college student living with you, we're only going to count, if they're working, we're only going to count $480 of their wages when we're determining your eligibility. We are required to count gross income. So, that's the amount you make before taxes, although that's not the amount that you're taking home likely because of, taxes, Social Security, contributions, and, medical, and all of that. But like I said, that's what the program requires us to count. How we calculate your income isn't one size fits all either. So everybody's income circumstances vary. So some applicants have a steady weekly salary that's consistent throughout the year, but then of course others are self-employed and working seasonally or maybe per diem. And in those circumstances, if that applies to you, we might need to look further into the past to be able to project your anticipated income going forward. And then if you're self-employed, we need to have a profit and loss statement from you. And we would be able to count your business expenses if you have a business and are self-employed. But unfortunately, if you're not self-employed, we can't take expenses into consideration, like medical insurance, car payments, that sort of thing. So we do just need to look at the gross income. And in general, any income that you have been making in the past that it shows up, on tax returns or pay stubs or anything, we're going to need to verify, if you say that, I'm no longer working this job or whatever it might be, you would need to confirm that for us by getting documentation from that former employer showing us that you're no longer there. So when you're filling out your application, just make sure, whether it's online or a paper application, just make sure that you're looking at the table, you're not overlooking any of these sources of income that you should be writing down. So wage income, Social Security, unemployment, pension payments, that sort of thing. All right, I think I have a question. Are those amounts approximate minimum income and assets combined? Nope, because there's no, I should have mentioned, there's no asset limit for rental opportunities. So you can have quite a bit saved in the bank or in 401ks and things, and we do not have a maximum there. We will still, this is actually the next thing I was going to say here, we are still going to ask you for your bank statements and things like that, because that's a requirement, just in case your assets are generating income, because then that income would need to be counted towards your total household income when we're determining your eligibility. So while there's no asset limit, we still will need to verify the asset. Is there free tenant parking? Yep, there is a spot included for every household. Is there central air and heat? Yes. Yep. Those are all included as well. Or the utility isn't included, but it is offered. All right. So the lottery itself. So as I mentioned, just if you're interested, you want to apply as soon as possible, just get the process started. And when you're filling out your application, I also wanted to mention too that you can apply for more than one unit size. So if you think you might be interested in both a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom, for example, you should indicate that on your application. There's no downside to doing that, but there is a potential downside if you only apply to one unit size and then later on you decide, well, you know, I might have been interested in a 3 or a studio and I didn't write that down. And the downside of that is that we anticipate that these waiting lists are going to be quite long. There is a lot of interest in this property. So if you only write down that you're interested in a 1-bedroom, but then you may consider a studio, you would be at the bottom of that list after the lottery if you didn't put that on your lottery application. So just fill out the application showing any unit size that you might be considering. When you submit your lottery application, we'll contact you if anything is missing, or if you're filling it out online, it will prompt you. It will have an error message if you forgot to fill out a portion of it. And if you're found ineligible, like when you send in the application, if you get a ineligible notice from SCB Housing and you think that there was a mistake, please let us know. That happens quite frequently with the online application. Maybe you filled something out incorrectly, or you added a 0 to your income, or whatever it might be. Please let us know so we can take a look at that for you. If you're found eligible for the lottery, you'll be sent an email with your lottery application number. So if you're filling this out online, you're going to get that instantaneous, we got your application message. But about a week or 2 later, you'll also get a personalized email from SCB Housing saying you've been approved for the lottery. Here's your lottery application number. As you can see on your screen, it's going to be in the form of a series of numbers. So if you were the very first person to apply for this lottery and be eligible, your lottery application number would be A.001, for example. And that's not a ranking of any sort. That's just a anonymous identifier that will be used when we do the lottery. We don't want to be calling names during a lottery. So when you get that email about a week or 2 after you submit your application that has that lottery application number, the email is also going to confirm whether or not you indicated that you well, first of all, it's going to say what bedroom sizes you qualify for and what you applied for, whether or not you indicated that you are applying for local preference or not. And if you self-reported on your application that you have local preference, that means that you either currently live in Waltham, you work full-time in Waltham, or you are the guardian of a child attending Waltham Public Schools. And the reason that that's important is because some of the affordable units at Alexan are going to have local preference, which means that some households are going to have priority for those units when compared to similarly sized households that don't have local preference. There's a lot more about local preference on the last page of the information packet, but just keep that in mind. That email that you get confirming your lottery application number, it's also going to have a link or an attachment to the documentation requirements guide. Basically, that is a guide that's providing details on what you will need to submit to us if you are called forward after the lottery as one of these top households on the waiting list. So how many pay stubs you might need to submit, you know, how many tax returns, that sort of thing. So just keep that aside so you're able to have it handy if you need to submit all of that information to us after the lottery if you're called to move forward. And then on your application, you will have also indicated your household type. So either 1, 2, or 3. And in some cases, smaller households can apply for larger units. But as I mentioned, in general, larger households are going to have priority over smaller households. And that's what that household type is for, 1, 2, and 3. And then again, as I mentioned before, for this lottery, 1-person households can't apply for two-bedroom units. 2-person households can't live in 3-bedroom units unless there's that reasonable accommodation that's medically necessary. Question here, are there any inside photos? Is it hardwood or carpet? I do not have that information. I assume that, again, I'm assuming here, I assume that it is plank flooring. So I assume that it is not carpeted, but if you could email, and I think I wrote this in here, but I'll write it in again. Just so we are responding to the correct person here when you, if you could email us at info@scbhousing.com, that would be perfect, because I can look into that and ask the developer if we don't have that information. What phone number do we call to ask more in-depth questions to ensure eligibility? You should email us at info@scbhousing.com, or I believe the number, yeah. So 617-782, I'll put it in here as well. If you prefer to call, you may do that, and that's what you want to call. I didn't get this email. Should I call to make sure the application has been received? So it depends on when you submitted it. So if you submitted your online application within the last 7 days or even 10 days, we may not have reviewed it yet. You should have got an instantaneous email, kind of like an auto reply email from JotForm if you submitted your application online, and then that is your confirmation that it was received. It just hasn't been reviewed by staff at SCB Housing yet. If you submitted the application by paper, or if you submitted it by email to us directly and you haven't heard back, definitely get in touch with us, because it does take us a little while to get through the applications. So someone has a question here. Would it harm my chances if I submit twice? If you submit an application twice, we're gonna throw out one of them, the first one, because you are not able to apply more than once. If you have a change, though, that you have already submitted an application and you need to change something, you want to email us so we can do that for you. If we receive duplicates, we're going to reach out to you and ask which one of those is valid. So it's not going to hurt your chances, but it's certainly not going to help them. You're not going to be drawn more than once in the lottery if you submit multiple applications. All right, so the lottery itself is going to take place on March 4th. It's going to be held via Zoom, just like this information session, and it will be held digitally, meaning that I'm going to be screen sharing, and the lottery numbers will be randomized on the screen and shared with you via this screen share. So every lottery number is included in the lottery. It's not just, if there's 53 units, there's not just 53 households that are going to be chosen. Sometimes that's how we think of lotteries, but the purpose of this lottery is going to be to establish an order for the waiting list. So an order of priority for us when we're sorting numbers onto the waiting list. So in general, it's more beneficial if your number is called early in the lottery, but it might not be the deciding factor on whether or not you'll be moving forward in the process. Because again, we need to sort the waiting lists by household type and all of that. So an example of that, if a type 1 household, a 1-person household is drawn first in the lottery, and they applied for a 2-bedroom unit, they're going to be behind all of the type 2 households because they don't have priority. So if your number is drawn later in the lottery, you shouldn't lose hope. You just want to know that, as we move down the list, you may still have the opportunity to move forward in the process. Generally, if there's 4 units, 4 1-bedroom units, for example, it's not going to be the first 4 people on the waiting list that that apply for, are approved for, and move into the apartments. That almost never happens. There is usually, so it takes us some time to find qualified and interested applicants even after creating the waiting list. And then during that lottery night, we do our best to send out the waiting list after they've been sorted to everyone as soon as possible following the lottery, usually no later than the following morning. So you'll be able to see where you fell. And, if you're actually attending the lottery, you're not going to know a whole lot during the lottery itself, because again, like I said, you still have to sort the results after the fact. But you won't have to wait long, because we'll sort the results right away and get them out to everyone that was a part of the lottery. So when you get that email after the lottery that has the waiting list attached to it, you'll be reviewing that, and you'll be finding your lottery application number. So that A.001, for example, you'll find it on one or more of the waiting lists, depending on which units you applied for, and you will be able to see where you fall in the waiting list and have a better idea as to whether or not you'll be moving on to the lease screening that will take place after that. Speaking of that, after the lottery, the top households from each waiting list are going to be put in touch with the leasing office, so the management team over at Alexan Waltham, and your contact information will also be provided to them so that you can coordinate the next step in the process, which is to apply for that lease screening. So you'll have about 5 days to connect with them, and that is the point in the process where they'll be doing your lease screening, which might be, which might include credit check, background check, rental history check, that sort of thing. You want to be aware that leasing offices almost always screen more households than there are units. So this is an example, there's 60% AMI one-bedroom units at Alexan Waltham, but there's likely going to be more than 6 households who are invited forward from the waiting list to complete a lease screening for those units. That's because management companies are often looking to lease units as quickly as possible, and normally the process is slowed down by households who maybe don't qualify. They made their way onto the waiting list, but they don't qualify for the lease, or they decided that they're no longer interested in the unit. So all of those things can happen within the period of a couple months between applying and the lottery. So once your lease approved, so you've gone through the process of meeting with the leasing office. If your lease approved, that's the point in the process where having a position near the top of the waiting list is beneficial to you, because if you're the top household on any waiting list, you're going to have the first chance to reserve an affordable unit. So for example, if you have the top position on one of the 2-bedroom waiting lists, you're going to have the first choice at the available 2-bedroom unit. That's true even if an applicant ahead of you on the waiting list happens to complete their lease screening with the management company first, because the waiting list order always has to be honored. So if you're the first person on the waiting list and you qualify, you go through all the screenings, you have first choice at the unit that waiting list is for. Once you've reserved an affordable unit, the leasing office is going to notify SCB Housing that you've qualified, and we're going to contact you at that point to coordinate the submission of your income, asset, and tax documentation that you now need to submit so that we can do your program eligibility review. So at that point, hopefully you've taken a look at that documentation requirements guide that I mentioned that was sent along to you by email, and you've started to gather that information that we're going to need for the final review. You'll have about 10 days to initially get that information into us, but we'll work with you throughout the process. And if you only have a few things up front, we will let you know what's missing and all of that. So no worries if you don't have everything on the first submission to us. There is a lot of information that needs to come in, so we understand that. Once SCB Housing approves your file, you'll be notified that you can go back to the leasing office, and the leasing office will be notified as well that you can establish your move-in date with the leasing office. So those are kind of all of these steps in terms of the screenings that you will have. And you don't need to, after you've moved into the apartment, you don't have any more screenings until your lease renewal date. So if you're in a affordable unit, we always suggest that maybe you keep aside a folder or something of your finances, your taxes, your pay stubs, that sort of thing, because each year you will need to recertify with the leasing office if you are looking to renew your lease after the first year or the second year or whatever it might be. And they usually start that process about maybe 3 months ahead of your lease screening. So say you moved in April or May of this year, you would be renewing your lease. You'd probably be filling out the paperwork around this time the following year. And if your income increases during the year of your lease, it doesn't mean that you are going to no longer be eligible for the affordable housing unit. There's kind of wiggle room here in terms of, you know, an established tenant and whether or not you will still qualify. So for an example of that, if you're, in order to qualify for this lottery, a two-person household who was qualifying for an 80% unit would need to make below $104,200. That same family can make up to $145,800 at the time of the recertification next year to remain eligible for the affordable apartment. So if you get a raise or if you get a different job, it doesn't mean that you are going to not be qualifying for the affordable housing program anymore necessarily. I think there's a couple other questions that came in, so I'm just going to look at those. Do we get priority if we are a Waltham resident and have a child who goes to school? Both. So I think what you're asking is if you both are a Waltham resident and there's a child in school, and it would be the same priority that anyone who has local preference gets. So either your local preference or you're not. It's not like a tiered priority where if you have, 2 out of the 3 criteria or anything like that, you're at a higher tier. But yes, if you're a Waltham resident, you're able to send us a copy of your lease when the time comes to show that, or a transcript from the public schools. Yes, you would qualify for local preference, and you would want to indicate that on your application. Someone's asking what size dog. I don't have the specifics of the pet policy, but like I said, there's usually some restrictions in terms of actual breeds. I have only seen a few properties that have like a weight limit at this point. It's usually just specific breeds that are excluded. But yeah, that's something that they would be able to answer for you either further down the line, or if you want to email us, we can get the specifics of the policy for you. Can the slides provided here be accessed via scbhousing.com? No, but if you email us at info at scbhousing, like I said, I can email them over to you. You're welcome to them. But that about covers everything I wanted to get through from the information packet. So again, we encourage you to get your lottery application in as soon as you know that you are interested, and we encourage you, I'm going to go back to the first slide here just so you can see that link again. So we encourage you to complete the application online if you can, just because it's the probably the cleanest way to get your information, and you will get a immediate response just saying that it was submitted. And yeah, if you have any questions for us in the meantime, you can email us or give us a call right here. This is our contact information. If you think of anything after tonight that you weren't able to ask, or if you're watching this after the fact and you have questions, please feel free to reach out. But any other questions before I let you go tonight? All right, I appreciate all of you joining, and oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate all of you joining. Great questions. Please email us for anything that I didn't have that you were looking for, and we'll get back to you right away or after we hear back from the management team or the developer with any information that you weren't able to get. Any units going to give out vouchers? So if you, this is completely separate from a voucher program in terms of like Section 8 or anything like that. But if you have a voucher and you are applying, you're obviously welcome to do that. You just want to know that you want to check with your voucher administering agency to make sure that the rents that are established for Alexan Waltham would work for your voucher. And they probably will. But a couple more questions here. If we're too low on the waiting list to get a unit, can we remain on the waiting list? Yes, I should have mentioned that. So if you say your waiting list has 50 people on it, there's only 10 units, and you know we screen about 20 households and the units are all filled, you will remain on the waiting list indefinitely. The team over at Alexan Waltham will reach out annually to confirm if you want to remain on the waiting list. If you do, then you will. If you don't, then they will remove you from the waiting list so they can have a fresh waiting list for whenever these units turn over. So they'll be moving down those waiting lists for forever because these units are going to always remain affordable. Is there a one-time annual fee for a cat or dog? No, I don't believe so. They didn't. This property didn't have a fee, pet fee, I don't believe. Actually, now that I'm saying that, let me check the info packet here. Yeah, no, they didn't mention a fee for animals. Just restrictions in terms of maybe which type and how many per unit. If our income increases above 140%, as you stated earlier, what happens? Do we have to pay more? Yep, so you could remain there. You would just need to pay the market rent from there on. Yep. So it wouldn't be considered an affordable unit anymore. They would have to replace it with another unit, another comparable unit in the building. So they still have the same number of affordable units. You just wouldn't be renting one of them anymore if your income was too high. What's the market rent for 3 people in a 2-bedroom? So I don't have the market rents on hand, so I don't know. But they might be marketing them on like apartments.com or something. I know that the amounts were probably given to us several years ago when we started working with this property, but they've likely changed since then. Yep, same question here. I don't have the current market rate rents, but they will have that for you if you're interested in learning about that later on. Or another question that I could ask them to give me the breakdown of, if you want to email info at, and we'll get that info from them. It's nice to know too, like how much of a deal the affordable units are and all of that too. So yep, I can definitely get that info for you. Anything else? All right, we encourage you to get your applications in if you're interested. And again, the lottery application period will close at 2 p.m. The online application will close at 2 p.m. on February 17th, so about 1 month from tomorrow. Question here, the applications that are put in before lottery is closed for 1 year after and go down that list only. Not sure what you mean by that, but like I said, so they will always go down the waiting lists that are established from this lottery. If they extinguish, they extinguish all the names that are on the waiting list, they're going to have new names and applicants who have added themselves to the waiting list after the fact. So the public is able to apply and be placed on the bottom of the waiting list, but lottery applicants would be above any household to apply after the lottery. How many parking spaces for a family of 4? So there's only one parking space that is assigned per unit or available per unit, they may have additional parking spaces that are available for a price, but one parking space is going to be included, meaning free of charge. Yeah, so some places take only the ones that are on the waiting list for the lottery, and then after a year you can put in an application. Yeah, you can always, people can put in an application immediately following this lottery to get on the waiting list, but the lottery applicants are not going to be like wiped out after 1 year. They'll still be going down the waiting list. You probably, yes, you would have to pay for an additional parking space if they have them available. I don't even know if they have them available. The parking is surface parking. They might have garage parking, but that might be an added fee. So the included parking spaces are going to be surface parking. Uncovered. Anything else? Again, email us. Anything that I wasn't able to answer, I will talk to the developer, and I'm going to note here just some of these parking questions for future lotteries. Yep, so the parking is going to be uncovered for the included spaces, meaning the spaces that are included in the rent. If you're renting an extra space, they may have garage parking. Yep, the building has elevators, that's correct. If once you're notified that there's a unit available for you, how long do you have to move in? There's no set time. You'd be scheduling that with the leasing office. If you're qualified and you're able to, you've gone through all of the screenings with both SEB Housing and the leasing office, and you're able to sign a lease. Say this happens in March, and you say, sorry, I can't move in until August. That might be an issue because that is several months that the leasing office would be waiting. But within reason, they will work that out with you in terms of how long they're able to keep the unit for you. There is no set time, though. Just know that if you submit all of your information to SEB Housing and then you move in 6 months after we have qualified you for the program, you're going to have to do a certification, an income certification with us again, because our certifications are good for 6 months. Is there extra storage space for your things in the unit? I don't believe so. What is in your unit is, the closets and all of that. There's not going to be basement storage or anything in this apartment building. Visitor parking, is it on the street? I believe I know they have visitor parking. I don't know how much of it. That is something that they, would discuss with you further down the line. It's not going to be, it wouldn't be on the street, I don't believe, but I don't know for sure. Is there any area in the building for extra small storage unit? I don't believe so. There's no storage that I know of that would be outside of your unit itself. When should we expect to move in after all documentation? So if this lottery is being held in early March, the units I think are available for April 1st leases. That all is very up in the air in terms of how long it takes individual units to lease, and applicants need to get their information in, and lease screenings take several weeks sometimes, and there's a bunch of different factors, but the units will be available in the spring, meaning March, April, for first leases. Are there balconies? I don't believe there is any balconies for these units. I don't know if there's balconies for other units. What if you have a good credit score? Are you still eligible for the unit? Yeah, I mean, a good credit score, I think you probably mean if you don't have good credit, but yeah, I mean, part of the lease screening with the leasing office is going to be a credit check. If your credit is not, it does not pass their credit check, then they're able to deny based off of that. If you pass the credit check, then that's one portion of their lease screening. You should be good to go. Is their Wi-Fi included? Not included, no. I don't know what their setup is, though, in terms of if you just need to set it up on your own, or if they have sort of like a company that you need to go through. But no, it's not included as a utility. You would need to set that up. Yep, central air and heat. That's correct. I think most of these new buildings have that. It would be kind of cruel not to, right? We've been homeless for the past 5 years, and you don't have a past landlord. Are you still eligible for the unit? Yep. So the lease screening, I'm not sure what the leasing office is going to request from you for landlord references, but I would assume, if you just don't have landlord references for the last 5 years, then they would work something out with you. That's not something that should disqualify you. Extra costs for central air and heat. So heat is not a utility that is included in the rent. The tenants for all units are going to be paying heat. So you pay the electricity costs regardless, and that would be both heat and air. So you'd be paying that as it's submetered. So it's not an extra cost, but it is one of your expenses as a tenant. It's electric, heat, hot water, and cooking. Balconies, I don't know. I said no, but usually that is a selling point. So they would have told us if the affordable units have balconies. So I'm going to say no, but I don't 100% know for sure. That is something that I could check in for you. Is heating via heat pumps, or is natural gas involved? So it's straight electricity as far as I know. I don't believe it's heat pump electricity, which I know sometimes is the case for some of these newer buildings, but where we have it as just straight electric, no gas. Anything else? I'm sorry I don't have some of the answers to some of the questions in terms of parking and balconies and things. So I said I wasn't sure on balconies. You can email us about that. I have a feeling it's a no. The affordable units, I believe they would have told us if they had them. Yeah. And again, any questions after tonight that you think of, you can email us at info@sdbhousing.com or give us a call. Will the rent be increasing yearly? The rents around here, as everybody knows, have been going up each year. The area median income is released every year, which is kind of what these rent calculations for this program are based off of. And as that increases, you will see an increase typically in the spring, but it can never be in the middle of a lease. So if you were to sign a lease on April 1st of this year, you wouldn't see an increase until at least April 1st of 2026, and you would have advance written notice of that. Okay, so someone's asking if there's security in the building. I've actually never had that question before. For one of these properties, I don't know if there's an overnight staff person at the desk, but I don't believe so in terms of them being specifically for security. I have a question here. I used a couple of emails. What if you can't remember what email you put in? Are we going to get a phone call? Nope. So if you put whatever email you put in terms of your when you submitted your application, that's the email that you're going to get emails from SDB Housing. So just make sure you're checking your emails. That's a great reminder, actually. Make sure you're checking your emails when you're applying for any of these lotteries, so you can just make sure that you know that you were approved, where your lottery application number is, and all of that. Because no, we wouldn't be calling as the first mode of communication unless you, excuse me, unless you requested that, like you didn't have an email address listed. What housing place takes care of this place? Is it Waltham Housing? No, so this isn't subsidized housing. This is a private, luxury apartment building that is being built that a management company is going to be looking after. A leasing office will be hired if they're not already to screen applicants and do maintenance and all of that. So it's not a subsidized housing. It has nothing to do with the town itself in terms of like Waltham Housing Authority or anything. It's just a private company. Anything else? And like I said, I apologize for anything I wasn't able to answer, but please email us at info@stbhousing.com, and anything I'm not able to answer that I can get in touch with the management company about or the developer about, I will get back to you on that. All right, we look forward to getting your applications, and if you have any questions on the application itself, once you take a look at it, or anything else that you see in the information packet, maybe that we didn't go over, please let me know. Thanks again for all the great questions and for joining tonight. Have a good night.